Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Devin Crosby of Lynn University. Leadership is a dynamic occupation that requires vision, excellence, but most importantly, the humility to serve your people on a daily basis. As you lead, make sure to become grounded in something greater than yourself. This will shape your decisions, provide clarity to your team, and cultivate trust. And trust is the foundation of success. Enjoy the podcast.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Natasha Wilson. Natasha is the Vice President for Student Life and Athletics at Central Methodist University. Greetings, Natasha. Thanks for joining us.
Greetings. Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am. I'm excited you're on. You've been in the position for almost 2 years now. Of course, you spent time at Johnson C. Smith at Lincoln University of Pennsylvania, and you've been in the industry for around 15 years now. So I imagine being an athletic director, getting to the chair was an exciting venture for you when you're talking about leading a department and also being over student life. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about is your role as VP for Student Life and Athletics. Tell me what that role entails in terms of the services you provide to the campus at Central Methodist.
Well, certainly, athletics intertwine with student services on campus on a daily basis. So for me, this role went hand in hand. So I oversee the daily operations for the Student Office of Development. That office consists of our student government, student organizations, housing, our Center for Faith and Service, counseling services, and health services. It also encompasses our intramurals there. And then when it comes to athletics, of course, on the athletic side, as the director of athletics, I oversee and supervise all of the daily operations for the athletics department. So that goes with recruiting, retention, facility management, any scheduling, game operations, fundraising, and budget administration for our 17 varsity sports and our 8 reserve sports teams.
Right. And it's interesting on a campus. Help me out and tell me how many students there are at Central Methodist there on campus.
So resident-wise, we have about 1,200 students on campus. And of those 1,200, we have around roughly 650, at least 650 are student athletes.
Oh, wow. Half the population, pretty much. A little
Yes.
more than half the population. So there's a lot of crossover, I guess, in what you do in terms of student life and student life development and leading the athletics department in terms of making sure the student athletes are cared for.
Correct. Yeah. We work hand in hand. Some of our staff actually work in both departments. Because we are a small institution, so a lot of people take on multiple roles. So you may have a coach, an assistant coach, or GA working as one of our residence life assistants.
Now, combining athletics and student life is common across the country outside of the NCAA's Division I, but it seems like from the outside looking in, it takes a fair amount of balance and organization in order to be successful at providing both areas the best energy and time that you can possibly provide. I wonder about your methods of organization, and I like to call it prioritizing priorities to make sure there's success in what the university has charged you to do.
Right. So definitely it is a task because the two departments are massive in size and we service this basically almost the same amount of students. So one of the, I would say, key things is delegation. I could not do it all by myself, and I am not a micromanager. I definitely believe in letting others, giving them a responsibility and letting them take the lead in trying to grow in a position and a space on their own. I feel like that is what people have done with me in my past experiences, allowed me to work independently, and have given me guidance and feedback when needed. And so I try to lead the same way with my staff. It definitely helps having the right people for the right task. That is something that one of my mentors, my previous boss, Stephen Joyner Sr., taught me, is you have to have the right people for the right task. And so I try my best to give people opportunities, to give them feedback and critique, to help them be the right person for the right task. But I certainly couldn't do it on my own, and I think that helps me to prioritize and be able to focus on maybe some of the higher level decisions that need to be made versus having to stay within the weeds of either area, student life or in athletics.
You think about the progress to becoming an athletics director, and I've interviewed a number of ADs on here on the One Question Leadership podcast, and many of them say either online or offline that just you can't really prepare once you get in the chair, right? You think you've done everything, but stuff comes at you at 1,000 miles per hour. And I wonder, coming up like you, Lincoln University of Pennsylvania, Johnson C. Smith, you do what you can to prepare, and you've worked in it seems like a bunch of different areas in those athletics departments. And then you get a position and you're over athletics and student life, the learning curve, I guess, in terms of learning the student life aspect. I mean, I guess you could say, and this may not be a smart statement, that students are students. So if they're student athletes, they're still students. But there is something different about being a student athlete and the student athlete life. So when you were considering this job, tell me about preparation for taking it when they offered it to you, and then you're in the chair, the student life aspect. How would you prepare for something like that if that wasn't a previous experience?
In the beginning, I thought about it and I was like, it's not my background, but it is my background. Like you said, I worked in athletics for over 15 years, and I feel like at every point that I've worked at in my experiences, I've worked with housing. I've worked with institutional advancement. I've worked with IT. I've worked with admissions. I've worked directly with financial aid. So I have always worked within the student life or the student services of the institution. I've just been housed and specialized in athletics. So that was kind of what helped me to say, Natasha, this is an opportunity that you can do. Of course, there's going to be a learning curve. I had to learn a lot more about what takes place in health services, and even with our counseling center. I'm a lot more involved in the housing process now than what I previously was. But again, I've always had a touch point with those offices. Either I served as a liaison to the athletic department, or just by nature of the position of being in compliance, I had to work directly with some of these other areas. So I just took on those experiences and the things that I knew from that, and came in with an open mind and knowing that, look, I don't know everything about student life, and kind of leaned on some of the other directors in my department to kind of help me with my learning curve. Like my dean of students, very important, and honestly, does a very good job of keeping me out of the weeds on certain things because he can run that area like that, but has helped me with my learning curve. So of course, I was a little nervous when I was offered the position, and not sure if I can hold up on that end of things. But once I get into it, it's just like any other job. You're going to learn, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to hopefully learn from them and move forward. And I think it's definitely helped me grow as a better administrator on either side, being that I came into a position where I knew I needed to learn some things. I felt very confident that I've learned the things and I've been prepared, for the athletic director's role. But taking on that vice presidency definitely was something new for me.
All right. Tell me about the patience that those in leadership positions when you arrived that they had to have with you for that learning curve. I mean, I guess the question is, were there big mistakes that you made and they exercised patience, understanding that you had to learn Central Methodist, but also learning how to be in a vice president's role on a university campus?
It's funny. I think my boss, President Drake, I think that he definitely knew that I was up for the task. But he also, he sat down and he told me, he said, I know that this is new for you, and that you'll have to adjust to being on the senior level, the senior leadership level. And I think not necessarily mistakes, but just being comfortable in knowing that I'm a part of that senior level decision making process. So speaking up and making sure that I'm not, I'm used to being in the department and maybe sitting in on those meetings, but not the one giving feedback or impacting directly at that table the decisions. And so I had to get comfortable with, you are a VP. You have to make that decision, and it's not that someone else is making the decision for you. No, now you have to make that decision that's going to impact the 1,200 students or the 650 student athletes.
Yeah, that was major. I imagine when you were gathering information, we talked about being organized and prioritizing priorities. When you were gathering information to make your first, whether it be small or huge decision, was there a lot of pressure? Outside, they probably didn't look at you like it was a big pressure decision, but for you when you were new to the chair, was there a lot of pressure in making that first decision that you had to report on when you talked to senior leadership?
Yes, I think for me, probably a lot of more. I put more pressure on myself probably than than anyone else. Yes, definitely. Making sure that I cover all my bases and I've done the research, and there's different things, especially when you're coming into an environment that you're not used to, you know what I mean, that you don't know. You have to consider all the factors. You have to consider sometimes the politics of things. So just making sure that I covered all my bases when it comes to things like that, and that I have all of the supporting facts for why I chose to make a decision the way I've made it.
What I do wonder on a school where student athletes are a little over half the population, how much involvement do you have with like alumni relations or any type of university development or those type of things at a school who has a smaller population, but student athletes are a big part of that population?
Yeah, I work directly with our Department of Institutional Advancement as well as Alumni Affairs. We do a lot of things together and in tandem. So, we host, for example, a big athletic auction, and we work in partnership together. So I take on half of the duties, that office takes on the other half of the duties. And a lot of that relies on our alumni coming back, giving back, and participating in that auction. So we do a lot of work together, especially because we are a smaller institution in a tight knit community here in Fayette. There are a lot of alumni who are in town and in surrounding areas. So definitely we take advantage of that, and work together to try to provide opportunities and opportunities for engagement with the alumni.
One thing I noticed that in the lead up to the position you're in now, when you were at Johnson C. Smith, Lincoln University, you were involved on a conference level. One thing I saw that what you were able to do was create new processes and programs and implement those processes and programs. And when you're able to do that, to be the person either to lead the way or be an influence in the creation of new processes, shows an ability to assess a situation and then implement whatever is needed to improve the situation. I wonder about when you were appointed to your current position, what was your approach to using that skill, right, of assessing and deciding directions to go in terms of programs or processes? I wonder about your approach to using that skill when you started almost 2 years ago, and now that you're, 2 years ahead and have a little more comfortability with what you're doing at the job.
Well, so I came in and immediately I wanted to kind of get the lay of the land. Again, this is different. I'm coming off of working 14 years, 13 and a half, 14 years in in a conference CIAA. So, I know CIAA. I know the people in CIAA, my colleagues. I know the athletic directors and presidents. This is completely different. One, it's outside of NCAA. So I had to learn the lay of the land when it came to NAIA. Same thing with our conference, the Heart of America Athletic Conference. And then the institution here is CMU. So I I didn't plan to come in immediately and make major changes. One, because I know I'm new. So I knew that I needed to let me kind of learn and observe before I start bringing in new things. Now, there were a couple of things that I might have noticed that we needed to improve, but it was improving efficiency and trying to make maybe an immediate impact. An example would be, say, in our ticketing process or in our cash handling processes. Those were things where I said, I think we need to make a minor tweak here, based on my previous experiences at, say, the NCAA level, and at my previous institutions. Now, I will tell you, COVID has threw a major wrench into, say, my onboarding and just coming in and trying to observe things. I came in the fall. We had a great fall. My men's soccer team won a national championship. And then we get to the spring and we're hit with something I've never experienced in college athletics. And even if I called experienced ADs that I know, mentors that I lean on, they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, they're trying to figure it out like
So,
you were, right?
exactly. So that kind of forced me into having to implement changes that probably would not have taken place so soon. It would have happened, but it just wouldn't have had to happen. COVID forced us to make changes of things that people didn't like, still may not like, but we have to do it just because we're now looking at more of a health and safety versus me just trying to enhance and improve what we were already doing. So um, I have definitely, I feel as though those skills have been used more than ever now. In terms of COVID, I mean, simple things in sports that you probably took for granted, like handshakes, has been something that we had to rethink in terms of after games and keeping players safe.
Right. Yeah, that's it's interesting you say that. Of course, I have a saying, and I say it a lot, is that the key to a peaceful existence is to master the ability to adjust accordingly. And that's kind of a principle I apply to life because you can never really know what is going to come your way, whether it be something to celebrate or something that you consider a challenge, but you just adjust and keep moving forward. So your mindset and your process on that, I think, has been a great one and is a great one that will continue to work for you as you move on. I'll ask this last question and then we'll wrap. I noticed that you were a part of the NCAA's Leadership Institute, which is a great program. It's been around for a while, and there are a lot of people who learned a lot from it and went on to do great things. I wonder about that program and what you learned from it in terms of you being an athletics director now. And I think it's wonderful when you look at a program like that and people who graduate from it within a year become an athletic director, which says a whole lot either about the program or about the people who go through the program. Talk to me a little bit about how that program helped you to do what you're doing now.
Well, honestly, that program, the Leadership Institute, the Charles Whitcomb Leadership Institute, I would say probably changed my whole perspective of where I wanted to go in my career and what path I want to take in my career. I always knew that I wanted to be an athletic director, but I don't think I truly understood what it took to lead as an athletic director. And that means understanding how other people think, how other people work together. Um, and the institute really, they took the time to help us understand not only ourselves but understanding other people. And then another thing I took from that institute was truly understanding my value, what I value, and my value and what I bring to the table. I think after going through some of the exercises that we would do about, what your own purpose is in life, not just for your career, and what you value, it really stuck with me. And I feel like, it was a 2 year process. After year one, I was overwhelmed, but I was overwhelmed in a good way. like I knew I had a path that I wanted to take now, and I knew some of the ways to get there. And again, the institute was awesome. I'm not the only one who finished and went and got another job. Half of my classmates went off to new positions, promotions, director of athletics chairs, the networking, the family that I felt like it brought. We all still talk. We have like a group chat. We check in on each other. I just think that community, and it's not just the class that I graduated with. I'm connected to all of the classes of that institute before me. And they will reach out. They'll check on you. It brings this sense of community that I never had before. But definitely it influenced me and let me know exactly this is the path I want to take and where I want to go.
Yeah, that's excellent. Sounds like an excellent program. Natasha, this has been an excellent conversation. I imagine Central Methodist is probably happy to have you on campus to do the things you do in terms of assessing and implementing new programs and processes for efficiency and helping to make the campus as a whole better. I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
That was Natasha Wilson. She's the Vice President for Student Life and Athletics at Central Methodist University. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.